Hi, I'm Rowena. A week ago, I was supposed to become a Bowman. Married, merged, and erased. The day before the ceremony, his sister mocked me to my face. But she didn't know I'd already prepared the file that would collapse their family from the inside. A voice memo, a banking trail, a plan. How does a family smile at you while setting your life on fire? Have you ever been the outsider in your own celebration? What's the one line someone said that made you rethink everything? And hey, what time is it where you are, and what state are you watching from? Drop a comment below, I'd love to know. The dress arrived on a Tuesday. 6 months, 3 fittings, and more compromises than I wanted to admit. I unzipped the garment bag slowly, almost like I knew something was waiting to punch me in the stomach. The fabric was the same, but the neckline wasn't. It plunged low, too low, not elegant, not me. A cream-colored note was clipped to the satin strap. "A little flair never hurts," written in Blair's looping handwriting, like a signature across my ribs. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I hung the dress in the closet, sat on the edge of the couch, and stared at the carpet until the sun faded from the windows. Then I ordered a second dress from a boutique downtown. Silk, no lace, no statement, just mine. 16 months ago, at my first fitting, the designer smiled and said, "You're going for classic, not society loud. I like that." I had smiled back then, proud. Now that version of the dress was gone, and so was the version of me who believed I had a choice. Dinner at the Bowman estate felt more like a board meeting than a family meal. Blair passed her phone around, showing off pictures of the updated dress like it was a branding campaign. Mrs. Bowman, eyes never leaving her wineglass, said, "It finally looks like it belongs in this family." Silence draped over the table like fog. I smiled, the kind of smile you wear when your lungs are full of water and you're pretending it's air. I excused myself before dessert. Back in my apartment, I took the second dress out of the box, hung it next to the first, side by side, one for their world, one for mine. I didn't cry. Instead, I made a new folder on my laptop and titled it Contingency. I started saving copies of everything, emails, receipts, alterations. I texted myself, "Start watching, start recording." At midnight, Blair sent me a voice message. "You'll thank me someday. Image is everything." I listened to it twice. Then I opened a blank document and typed the title, Day 1. The dress was never mine. The invoice came through just after 9. I had been sitting at the kitchen table for an hour, sipping lukewarm tea and trying to feel excited. But excitement doesn't live in spreadsheets. And when I saw the number, it vanished entirely. The vendor confirmed a final payment, $120,000. The issue was, I never approved it. I scrolled, twice. The line item was gone from our joint planning doc, but the money, gone too. I opened the bank portal, hands suddenly colder than the mug I was still holding. The transaction was there, labeled as Consulting Transfer J. Mathers Capital. Not a florist, not a band. A name I'd never heard attached to 6 figures from an account meant for a wedding. I didn't call Lyle. I didn't even flinch. I printed the confirmation, slid it into a folder marked private, and whispered out loud, "Don't accuse, investigate." The next night, over seared scallops and Bordeaux, Lyle talked about Capri, the honeymoon, the water, "we'll need at least 10 days." I nodded at the right times, practiced calm. When I brought up the transfer, he didn't blink, but his tone did. "Are we really doing this right now?" he asked. "God, Rowena, it's a wedding, not a tax audit." I watched the corner of his mouth twitch when he reached for his wine. He didn't ask what I knew, only told me to stop asking, and I did, with my voice. 6 months ago, in a corner booth downtown, his card was declined. "Banking glitch," he'd said, kissing my hand like it meant nothing. Another night he borrowed mine. "Just for gas." He never paid it back. I hadn't cared then. That version of me believed love explained everything. Now I knew. Love explains nothing if you're not allowed to question. I started a spreadsheet at 2 a.m. that night, titled it Personal Financial Tracking. Input every transfer, date, vendor, red flag. I Googled J. Mathers Capital, a shell company, registered in Delaware. I bookmarked the Secretary of State's Business Index. Minutes later, a notification popped up on my phone. Scheduled wire, $48,500. Same destination. I stared at the screen, exhaled once, then shut my laptop. What the hell are you hiding, Lyle? The champagne was already uncorked when I walked in. Glittering glasses clinked, laughter bubbled like an audio filter, and the room smelled like a magazine ad for expensive perfume and insecurity. I scanned the space. I didn't recognize most of the faces. None of my friends were there. Blair floated toward me like she owned the air between us. "Don't worry," she said, her smile all teeth. "I took care of everything." She had. Everything but me. A woman with highlighter so sharp it could cut leaned in and said, "So you're the quiet type. That's rare in this family." Another raised her glass. "To Rowena, finally joining the legacy." I lifted my glass out of sync with the others. Legacy. As if I were a stray being housebroken. They talked about Lyle, how well he was doing, how he used to be such a wild card. One of them said, "You've tamed him. Let's hope you stay in line too." My face didn't move, but I felt something in my chest shift, like a quiet click. Locked in or locked out, I wasn't sure which. Earlier that day, Emily, my best friend from New York, had texted, "Still not sure where the party is. Are we supposed to meet you somewhere?" I'd never answered, because I didn't know either. I stepped out onto the balcony halfway through the night. The air smelled like old city bricks and blooming jasmine. Inside, someone was live streaming. I saw her phone angled toward me as I stood alone. Later, I found the clip on TikTok. "The Outsider Bride, LOL." The views spiked. By morning, my inbox was filled with comments, messages, snide remarks from strangers. "Why does she look so miserable? Girl, blink if you need help." I deleted my socials. Blair texted, "Oops, didn't know they were filming. You looked lovely, though." Lovely. Like a prop. I sat alone with my phone, watched the numbers climb. Then I opened notes and started writing names. Dates, events, screenshots. They wanted a story. I would give them one. I began deleting photos with Lyle. The vacations, the staged brunches, even the engagement shoot with the fake laugh I practiced in the mirror. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. Scheduled payment alert, $48,500. Memo, J. Mathers Capital Retainer. I closed my eyes, inhaled once. My thumb hovered over the notification, but I didn't swipe it away. "You erased my presence tonight," I whispered. "So I'll erase yours, publicly." The word prenup landed on the coffee table between us like it carried a disease. I didn't dress it up or drop it casually. I said it clearly, carefully, like a surgeon's scalpel. Lyle blinked, then smirked. "I thought we were past that kind of thinking," he said, swirling his glass of wine like it might wash down the sting. "You really think I'd screw you over?" I didn't answer. I waited for him to ask me why I brought it up. He didn't. He started talking about legacy, about love, about how marriage is built on trust and not paperwork. But the more he said, the more I saw how quickly his voice slid from romantic to rehearsed. He never once asked what was in the contract, just why it existed at all. "You're trying to avoid a paper trail. That's what this is." I let him monologue, sat through his metaphors, his analogies, his thinly veiled offense. Then I nodded, took another sip of water and said, "You're right. Let's just keep it simple." That night, I emailed my lawyer. 6 years ago, I had my name on a Manhattan lease, a museum plaque, a Roth IRA. Now I had one joint account, an address no one let me pick. I gave up a nameplate for a name change, and somehow, in all the wedding planning, I had become invisible, on paper and in truth. The email reply came at midnight. No frills, just an attachment labeled Rutledge Property Chain. Lyle's condo, the one he bragged about buying in cash, was in Blair's name. So was the car. So was half the art in our apartment. If we split, I would have nothing. No legal claim, no financial trail, and no way to prove this wasn't just poor judgment. It would look like I married rich and left bitter. They built a fortress, and I married the gate. I didn't cry, I didn't panic. I renamed my folder. It had started as contingency. Now it was ownership strategy. He wants silence? Fine, let's make it legal. The next morning, my phone buzzed. Blair had sent a photo of the printed wedding invitations. Aren't they beautiful? It's all becoming real now. I stared at the script. The calligraphy curled like barbed wire. My name, in gold. I replied, More real than you know. Then I smiled. The kind of smile that doesn't show teeth, only intent. He passed me the honey butter with a smile too fast to be real and said, "Here you go, Elise." The clatter of silverware didn't come from me. It came from Blair. The room paused, just long enough to feel it. Blair's mouth opened, then closed again. Lyle recovered with a laugh and a shrug. "Sorry, babe, my head's a mess today." Someone forced a chuckle. The moment moved on. I didn't. On the way home, neither of us spoke. He hummed along with the radio. I stared out the window. I wasn't thinking about his tone or the way he laughed it off. I was thinking about a week ago, about that midnight text that flashed on his screen, a contact that started with E. "You didn't call me by mistake. You remembered out loud?" I waited until he left for his workout, then opened my laptop. It didn't take much. A search through old tagged photos, archived articles, and Instagram comments no one bothered to delete. The name kept coming back. Elise Moreau? Blair's cousin? Lyle's ex? And 4 years ago, she vanished from every Bowman frame, like she'd never existed. But the internet doesn't forget cleanly. I found a blog post from a defunct local site, Charleston Royalties' Quiet Separation. Then a photo, Elise standing beside Lyle, wearing the same strand of pearls I now owned. I reached out anonymously to a contact listed in an old curator's network. The reply came fast. She got pregnant, unmarried, the family shut it down. Erased, rewritten. I pulled out our holiday card from last year. I was seated in the same position Elise had been in that photo. Same pearls, same pose. The difference? I was still here, so far. You replaced her with me. What happens when you find someone better than me? I started scribbling notes. Blair's phrases, the guest list from that brunch, Lyle's moods. A timeline formed, like a police string board for emotional replacement. I wasn't crazy. I was next in line. I texted Blair. "Funny how pearls never go out of style." She didn't respond. 2 minutes later, Lyle called. I watched the screen until it stopped vibrating. "You buried her to protect your image. Let's see what happens when I unbury her." That night, I sent an email to my lawyer. Subject, Addendum, Elise Moreau. Attached were the blog post, the screenshots, the timelines. I ended it with one line. "Just in case I disappear next." The gallery lights dimmed around me like the walls were listening. I held a glass of Chardonnay tighter than I meant to. My fingers pressed against its stem like I was afraid it might slip. That's when he walked up. Joel Mathers. I didn't know his name yet, but I knew the look. Calm, deliberate. Not predatory, familiar, like he'd been watching something fall apart for a while and finally decided to speak. "He never told you about me, did he?" The wine didn't spill, but my breath caught halfway to response. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. He already knew. We sat outside beneath string lights and false laughter. He laid out the years like a map, 3 of them. Financial support, trips to Lisbon, Montreal, Martha's Vineyard. He said Lyle used the word someday like punctuation. Someday we'll stop hiding. Someday it'll be official. Joel looked tired when he said it. Not broken, just done. He told me this marriage was for optics, that you were cooperative. I stared at the condensation gathering at the base of my glass. It ran in a single line, like something escaping slowly. Joel slid his phone across the table. There were messages, transfer receipts, a selfie on a boat, Lyle leaning into Joel's chest, wearing a silver ring I had never seen. Caption, "Yours, always." I didn't speak until I got home. And even then, it wasn't with my voice. I opened our old texts. Every late meeting, every half-written excuse. The cracks were everywhere. I just hadn't known how to read them before. "You weren't building a life with me," I whispered to no one. "You were hiding yours." I didn't cry. I opened a new folder, named it Exit Layer 1, populated it with screenshots, a timeline, copies of prenup refusals, property transfers, and now, Joel. The next morning I texted him, "I believe you. Let's compare notes." We met at a coffee shop without a name. I brought a leather-bound notebook. He brought resignation and clarity. We aligned stories like chess pieces, move by move, truth by truth. "I used to think I was the endgame," he said. "You were," I said, "until I became the decoy." I could have walked away then, but I didn't want to leave. I wanted to rewrite. Back home, I found a package at my door. No return address. I opened it carefully. Inside, the same silver ring from Joel's photo. Taped to the box was a yellow sticky note. Just in case he tells you it was fake. I slid it into the drawer with the flash drive and locked it. Thank you, I said out loud to the empty room. Noted. The toast was wrapped in sugar and cyanide. Some women come and go, Blair purred, raising her glass. Family stays. Lyle laughed too loud. Someone else clapped. I lifted my champagne flute but didn't drink. I didn't blink either. It wasn't what she said. It was what she meant. After dinner, I caught her near the catering truck, far from the curated lighting and curated lies. You'll never be first, she said. No preamble, no irony. He'll never love you the way he loves this family. I'll always be first. I nodded like she'd handed me directions to somewhere I already planned to go. Then I turned around and walked away, heels crunching against gravel like glass underfoot. At 11:17 p.m., my phone lit up. Voice message from Blair. I knew the moment I hit play that it wasn't meant for me. She bought it, Blair said, her voice syrupy and casual. One more day and the house is ours. Don't forget to delete the joint account after the vows. I played it again, then one more time, not to double-check, to memorize it. My fingers didn't shake. They moved fast. I saved it, renamed it, backed it up in 4 places. They weren't just planning a wedding, they were laundering trust. In my closet, I sat cross-legged with a hard drive and a highlighter. I texted Joel. I have proof. Tomorrow is game day. He replied within 60 seconds. One word. Ready. I printed everything. Screenshots, transfers, voice-to-text transcripts. I labeled folders like a prosecutor. My final one, the Bowman collapse. At dawn, Lyle knocked on my door. His face lit up like a man without a single reason to doubt his world. You okay? He asked, stepping inside. I am now. He kissed my temple. I didn't move. He walked away, whistling. I watched his back disappear down the hall. He had no idea he'd just walked past his own reckoning. I arrived at the hotel suite with a white garment bag over my arm and a small flash drive in an envelope labeled, "For the planner, in case of emergency." I placed it on the vanity, smoothed the edge of the envelope flat, and looked in the mirror. The pins in my hair held more than the veil. They held restraint, strategy, endings. Let them come for me. I'll be gone before the flames catch. The veil rested on its hanger. I wouldn't be needing it. My face was done, lips neutral, eyes lined like armor. Black coffee sat cooling beside me, untouched. The makeup artist had asked if I was nervous. I told her no. I told her this day wasn't about vows. It was about exit. Joel called at 8:03. Vendors are locked out. Silas is in place. The files are uploaded. Good, I said. I handed a flash drive to the planner. She tilted her head. What's this? In case the bride doesn't walk down the aisle. She blinked. I smiled. Not if, when. 10:30. Guests were arriving. My phone buzzed with a photo from Blair. Her holding a mimosa in the bridal suite, captioned, "Big day, sis." The text felt like a threat in pastel. I walked out the service entrance in flats and a blazer. No one stopped me. A few cameras clicked. A distant, "Was that her?" chased behind me. Let them guess. Joel waited at the curb, engine running. I opened the door. He didn't speak. We pulled off before anyone could follow. At 11 o'clock sharp, the planner pressed play. A projection screen lit up in front of 143 guests. Blair's voice echoed through the ballroom. She bought it. One more day and the house is ours. Don't forget to delete the joint account after the vows. Then, the property deeds, financial transfers. My name tied to accounts I'd never opened. An entire blueprint of exploitation. Gasps. A woman dropped her wine glass. The officiant packed up his things. Lyle's phone buzzed. We need to talk. SM. Silas doesn't repeat himself. That night Blair called. 3 times. On the 4th I answered. You think this makes you clever? She spat. You humiliated our family. You destroyed everything. You buried Elise, I said calmly. You tried to bury me. The difference? I dug my way out. Click. Joel and I drove out of Charleston before sunrise. We didn't speak for the first 2 hours. The air between us was too full of endings. At a beachside cottage, we sat by a fire pit. He asked, "What now?" I didn't look at him. I looked at the flames. At the wedding invitation I'd torn in half. Build, I said. But this time, only what I want. The coffee brewed slower that morning. I didn't mind. The silence in my apartment wasn't haunting anymore. It was earned. I sat by the window with the mug in my hands, the heat barely registering against my skin. Outside, Charleston moved on like nothing had happened, but inside my inbox the headlines hadn't stopped. Charleston heiress wedding implodes. Scandalous exit. What happened to the Bowman bride? They thought I left to humiliate them. They were wrong. I left to protect what was left of me. Joel had forwarded me the email at dawn. Silas froze the Bowman accounts overnight. Lyle was cooperating, code word for lawyering up. Blair vanished. Her profiles, her presence, her curated world. Gone. I didn't smile. There was nothing about this worth celebrating. But I nodded to myself. This wasn't revenge. This was reclamation. I opened the drawer in my desk, pulled out a letter I'd written months ago and never sent. The paper had yellowed slightly, like it had aged with my patience. I would have stayed, it read, if you had ever looked at me the way you look at yourself. I read it once, then set it in a ceramic dish and lit a match. The flame curled fast, ate through the ink like it had waited for this moment too. I watched the ashes spin and settle. My phone buzzed again. If you're ever in New York again, my old boss wrote, we'd love to have you consult. I opened my laptop, a new document, a new title. Women who rewrote their endings. I wasn't sure what the first line would be yet, but it would be mine. Joel offered Miami, a partnership, a full reset. I looked out at the Charleston skyline, sunlight bouncing off old bricks and regrets. Then I stood up, pulled the blinds closed. I may leave this city, but I'll never leave myself behind again. That afternoon, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a wedding photo. Everyone smiling, except me. On the back, Blair's handwriting. You won, but we never forget. I placed the photo in the drawer beside the burned letter. Then I locked it. It's over, unless they try again. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to scream or fight or even explain. Sometimes it's simply to walk away and know exactly why you're doing it. Looking back, I don't regret choosing myself. I regret not doing it sooner. If you've ever felt like a supporting character in your own life, let this be your reminder. You can rewrite the script. You are not required to stay where you are, only tolerated, never celebrated. But tell me, have you ever stayed too long in a story that wasn't yours? What did it take for you to leave? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If this story resonated with you, drop a 1 below or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't, that's okay too. Tell me why. I want to hear all sides. And don't forget, if you want more stories like this, hit that subscribe button. You never know when the next story might speak directly to your heart.